Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, here to bring you an early week episode talking about the future at the quarterback position for the Falcons, which is the most important question going into the offseason. Last week, talked about it at length on Wednesday's show. We do have another Desmond Ridder game in the books, and I think this one was probably the most important one, given that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 18 are probably going to rest their starters. So, how much does that really tell you if Ridder lights up their starters or whatever? That's going to be a weird game. So, at this point, we've seen 3 games of Desmond Ridder, and I think we can start to talk about, has Desmond Ridder shown enough to start in 2023, or at least to be given an opportunity to do so? And that's going to be the crux of today's episode. Again, with the Bucs sort of likely to rest their starters, there's not really a whole lot of intrigue with that game whatsoever. So, like I said on the post-game show this weekend, there will be no live shows this week, no Wednesday show, and no post-game for the Bucs game, as I'm going to be taking a vacation a little bit early, because that's just how it happened to fall this year. But definitely going to have some recorded episodes for you guys, including this one, getting into some of the big off-season topics, because that's clearly where this is going. And the Desmond Ridder question, like I said, is the big one. This is the major question. That the real crux of the offseason is going to revolve around, do the Falcons have enough confidence in Desmond Ridder to make him the starter for 2023? And it's not an easy question to answer. It's pretty subjective. I don't think it's a slam dunk, yes, but I don't think it's a no. So I can only give my opinion on it, and my opinion is that, yes, I think Desmond Ridder, after this Cardinals game, has shown you enough glimpses. He's shown you week over week growth. He's shown you some wow throws, and I think it's shown me enough that I think with a healthy team around him, a better defense, I think that Desmond Ridder can be an NFL starter. I think that he's shown that he can do it against the Cardinals. Admittedly, not a great opponent, but the Falcons are also a bad football team, so keep in mind the context of that. They're going up against a poor opponent, but the Falcons themselves are also a poor team. So you have to keep that both sides of the context coin in your mind there. And I think that Ridder against the Cardinals, this was his best game. Statistically, raw numbers-wise, not all that impressive. He had his touchdown pass taken off the board. The refs ruled Cordarrelle Patterson incomplete. To me, when your back is on the ground and you have possession of the football in the end zone, that's a touchdown. The ball did come out, shortly after that, like split second later, but I think it's pretty clear that he had possession. And when you're going into the end zone, all you have to do is break the plane. If he was running in, with that, it would have been a touchdown, even if he lost the ball. But all of a sudden, when he's catching it now, they say, oh, well, it came out after he had already landed on his back and all this stuff. So I think that was a poor call. And I get that the NFL rules probably make it that way. But to me, Desmond Ridder threw that touchdown. He hit Cordarrelle Patterson on the money at the goal line. Cordarrelle Patterson was in the end zone. I think, for people that are like, oh, well, he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass, he threw a touchdown pass against the Cardinals that the refs blew, in my opinion. And even if, and even then, you could just say Patterson dropped it or had the ball ripped away. It was on point. It was a touchdown pass. So, we could put to bed the narrative that he can't make throws in the red zone or something like that. The other side of that coin is, of course, the Falcons are probably just going to hand the ball off in the red zone at least 50% of the time, because Tyler Algier and Cordarrelle Patterson are both excellent goal line running backs that are both going to demand a lot of carries there. So you don't necessarily need Ridder to be this elite red zone passer right away. But all that being said, to me, Ridder in this game did take a step forward. I thought he looked cool under pressure. I got to give props to Vance Joseph of the Cardinals, who called the game that I wish, Dean Pease had called. Just relentless pressure on Ridder, constant creative blitzes that the Falcons offensive line still can't figure out. That's part of the reason that, I'm very much in favor of this team moving on from Drew Dahlman as a starter. I think he certainly deserves to stick around on this roster, but they still can't pick up blitzes. It's week in and week out. They struggle with the same stuff, and a lot of that has to do with the protections. I don't think, and Drew Dahlman is the one that is setting that up, and it's not getting done. So, Ridder was under pressure constantly. So even though the corners of the Cardinals were both out, like their starting 3 corners were out, Ridder didn't have time to sit there and pick on these corners because he had to get the ball out quick because of how poor the pass protection was and how much difficulty the Falcons had at keeping blitzers off of Ridder. So I know one of the criticisms will be, well, why didn't Ridder blow up this secondary because they were so hurt? It's because the Falcons offensive line, really failed at protecting him well. I think when Ridder did have time in this game, he hit some good throws. I think when he was under pressure, he also hit some good throws. The numbers that stand out, 73% completion percentage. Now, a lot of those were short passes, but they were crisp. They were clean. They were on target, most importantly, right? A lot of them were for first downs that were crucial plays. If you look at his best passes, one of them was a defensive pass interference that was not called. You guys know I'm talking about the Damiere Byrd deep bomb that was perfectly thrown. Damiere Byrd was right in position to make that catch, and he got his arm completely held by the defender. The refs didn't call it. I mean, this was one of the worst officiating games of the season. So that was probably a 40, 50-yard pass play for Ridder that was taken off the board by defensive pass interference. And that was a perfect deep throw. We saw a really gutsy tight window throw to Michael Pruitt on a crucial conversion. It was a really dangerous throw, but that was a bullet. It was right on point. It was perfectly thrown, and look, a perfect pass beats good coverage every time. And Ridder did a great job on that one. Several great plays to London, some crisp passes. Like I said, that Patterson touchdown was on the money. And I thought Ridder just did a good job navigating the pocket. He still looks a little uncomfortable there, like he's still getting his footing, still getting used to this offense. He doesn't know. You can tell that the offense he doesn't know it like the back of his hand, right? He has to sort of look around and try to remember exactly what's going on, and that's not unusual for a guy making his 3rd start in this offense. So I'm not really going to hold that against him, but I think he moves well in the pocket, and you can see how mobile he is when he does get out on the run. He's so comfortable throwing on the run. He threw some great passes when he was rolling out. He evaded what looked like a sure sack and picked up a first down with his legs. The thing with Ridder that I've liked is he has very good contact balance, and that's important for a quarterback, because if you can survive those glancing blows and stay on your feet to get a pass off, or not comparing Ridder to Patrick Mahomes in his overall game, but you see guys like Mahomes and Josh Allen, they can survive that arm or that leg that impacts them, stay up on their feet, and get the ball out. I think Ridder has shown that so far. He's got that contact balance, that ability to stay up with pressure coming. And I was impressed by all of those things. I think, honestly, that he had a good game, even though the numbers weren't very impressive. So I think if you take this all in context, he has one legitimate weapon in the passing game in Drake London. He does have a good short yardage outlet, or he has 2 good short yardage, like passing running backs, right? In Patterson and Algier. And I think Michael Pruitt is like a, solid to good tight end too. And I think that's a guy you want to bring back. But other than that, it's pretty barren in the Falcons receiving core. And you could tell that, teams just don't respect the Falcons passing game weapons, and it's a problem, but it's a problem that's going to have to be fixed in the offseason. And of course, I feel like it's so sad that we didn't get to see Ridder and Kyle Pitts, because I feel like Ridder's style, where he's willing to throw that pass that Mariota really wasn't willing to throw, he's willing to throw that pass. And I think Kyle Pitts is the perfect receiver for that, because Kyle Pitts is going to be out there. He might have a guy close to him, but Ridder's going to put that ball in the air and give Kyle Pitts a chance to make plays. And I think that is going to be really special when Kyle Pitts comes back. Unfortunately, didn't get a chance to see that because Pitts was hurt before Ridder ends up getting a chance to start. But I like that. I think Ridder was better early on in this game than he has been in the past 2 games, where he sort of started quite slow. And then, like he has in every game, even the Saints game, I thought Ridder finished really strong. I thought he was playing his best football at the end of the game, got his first career game-winning drive and his first W. I think the Falcons would have scored a touchdown there if they needed it on that final drive. They didn't need it. They got down inside the 3, just needed, basically got the ball in place and kicked a field goal to win, which is great. Don't give the opponent a chance to make magic happen, with some mistake. But he did exactly what they needed for the win. And we're not really evaluating the whole team at this point. Like, don't look, we're trying, the purpose of this show and the purpose really of these last few games for me is we need to know, can Desmond Ridder do it? And in the context of this game, yes, it's a weakened opponent, but your team sucks as well. The Falcons defense was awful in this game. And miraculously, once again, held the opponent under 20 points. David Blau was dealing early, but they seemed to sort of get to him a little bit later. I thought, the Falcons secondary had a couple of players making plays, AJ Terrell and Isaiah Oliver mostly, and they got some help from special teams to really bring this one home. But in the context of this game, Ridder did exactly what he needed to do to win. And I think if you don't have the Drake London fumble against the Saints, there's a chance that he would have been able to finish that one off too. And this is something that has been consistent for him in college to the NFL now. In the 3 games that I've seen in the NFL, that Ridder is a really strong finisher. And that's really important in the NFL. Now, it's great if you can play great in all 4 quarters at the beginning of the game too. And maybe that's something that I don't think Ridder's going to be like a terrible quarterback early, but he really gets in the zone and is completely fearless late in games. This is the type of guy that can get you that game-winning drive, like Matt Ryan was famous for, right? And I think mentally he's absolutely on point in those situations, and I think that is one big thing in his favor that he's shown every single week, even though it hasn't really worked out due to like a litany of errors and officiating mistakes. I think Ridder has done enough ultimately that the team should have had a chance. But again, it's hard to evaluate when the defense is playing so poorly and the offense is sort of a shell, without Kyle Pitts and the other thing is with Ridder, the biggest issue right now is that I think the Falcons do have one more good receiver, and that's Olamide Zaccheaus, but there is no rapport between Ridder and Zaccheaus right now. It on multiple plays, and I don't think that they can't work together. I think it's just that they haven't. That 4th and 2 play that everybody hated, right, where that was the rollout. Zaccheaus came open immediately on the motion. Ridder just didn't look his way, didn't see him. I don't know if he was confused about the play or what, but Zaccheaus came open, was absolutely there for the 4th and 2. Ridder just didn't see him. There was a 3rd and 6 later where Zaccheaus comes open, and that's the pass where Ridder had the ball batted. Ridder hesitated before throwing that ball to Zaccheaus. And I think that's just a chemistry thing that needs to be developed. This is not, Ridder barely had an opportunity to play with these starters this year because the Falcons waited so long to hand the reins to him. It's sort of a miracle how quickly he's built the rapport with Drake London, considering he played on the scout team for 14 weeks or whatever it was. So I think that will come. I'm not concerned. Like, I would still bring back Zaccheaus, but right now the problem is that Ridder has chemistry with London, and he's comfortable dumping it off to Algier and Patterson, and there seems to be definitely a connection brewing with Michael Pruitt, who definitely should be brought back as well. But the other receivers, there's not much there. We did see the nice deep bomb to Damiere Byrd, so maybe there's something there as well. But ultimately, the passing game is sort of a shell. It's barely holding together, and I think Ridder definitely has maximized the passing game more than Mariota was. Mariota definitely had better chemistry with Zaccheaus. That was the one guy that Mariota was consistently able to hit in key situations. But the ultimate question is, like, we've only got 3 games, and this is how it was always going to be with the Falcons deciding to wait this long to give him a chance. Have we seen enough? Like, has Ridder shown enough? And, like, it's not been flashy, but again, in the context of the team and their opponents, Ridder having to go on the road to New Orleans, on the road to Baltimore, first 2 weeks, just brutal first 2 games for any rookie quarterback to go into. I think that it has been enough. Now, the bar's not very high, right? Like, I mean, it's not like he's had a great start, but you look around the league at how many quarterbacks are struggling, how many teams can't find the guy, how many teams would be happy with seeing their rookie just taking strides every single week. I mean, you look at Kenny Pickett, really struggled early. Given him more time, he started to improve, and now he's playing quite well to end the season. I think if Ridder had gotten on the field at the same time as Kenny Pickett, we'd be in the exact same place feeling confident in him as the starter, just like the Steelers are. But because they didn't give him the chance earlier, Ridder's sort of at an earlier point in his growth. And, maybe after the Bucs game, if he completely shreds the Bucs backups, we feel a little bit better. It's like, oh, okay, that's nice. That, what does that really tell us ultimately? But it might be fun. But I think you just need him to what do you need a rookie to do, right? A rookie quarterback, he needs to be able to run your offense. He needs to be not putting the ball in harm's way, making good decisions with the football. He needs to be able to navigate pressure, and he needs to show week-over-week improvement, even if he's not a great starter right away. That's all you're really looking for from your rookie starter. I think Ridder has checked all those boxes. There have been some turnover-worthy throws. There was that one errant pass to Drake London early, that Drake London had to really jump up for and went up in the air, and that probably could have been picked off. And some people might call that Michael Pruitt completion, like turnover worthy, but I wouldn't. I think that's nitpicking, and that was a great pass. It was right on the money, right where it needed to be. Was it risky? Yes. Was it completed? Also, yes. And that defender didn't get a hand on it. So that's the difference between a great play and a turnover, is those milliseconds, those inches. And in that scenario, Ridder gets the thumbs up for hitting that right on the money. But my thought is that, and it's complicated, so I'll break it down in detail here, but the ultimate answer that we're going to come to is yes, I think Ridder has shown enough. I think you look at all the factors. The first factor would be, where are the Falcons in the draft, right? Because the draft is if you're picking really high in the draft, that is a great place to go get your quarterback if you like who's there. And this is a solid group at the top, right? I think CJ Stroud really proved himself as I think he really took the issues in his scouting report were like questions about his mobility and can he handle pressure. And I think he did that extremely well. He handled the pressure really well against Georgia. And I think he showed that he's not a statue. I never really thought he was. I know some people thought he was had no mobility whatsoever. I don't think it's that bad. I think he's probably like an average athlete. But I think he had a good game. Bryce Young, look, outside of the size concerns, I have no question about Bryce Young's ability to be a franchise quarterback. It's really how small is he, right? If he comes in at 6 foot, 200, he's going to be going number one overall. If he comes in at 5'10", 180, there's going to be questions. But he is absolutely a gamer and a guy that is just a phenomenal quarterback. So you got those two guys. Then you got a bunch of question marks, right? Will Levis, I'm not interested, to be honest. Just too big of a question mark and too expensive. Anthony Richardson, a little bit more intrigued because he's probably not going to require, a trade up into the top 5 like Will Levis would. But again, where the Falcons are picking, which right now is 7th, by the way, I think it's too early for Anthony Richardson. So I don't think quarterback in the draft, at least finding a starter, if you want to talk about Hendon Hooker on day 3 as like a high upside backup, lottery ticket type of guy, I'll have that conversation. But, in terms of the first round pick, the Falcons are not in range to get those guys because Houston's going to take their guy, 1. I think it's pretty much a guarantee. And Houston will have the number 1 pick no matter what, I believe. Well, I guess technically not. If Houston does win because they have the tie, if Houston wins next week, the Bears would get it because the Bears will be 13. Well, no. The Bears would have to. No. Houston has the number 1 pick locked in. I'm trying to do draft pick math and strength of schedule math in my head while we're recording. That's never a good combination. But yes, Houston, if they were to win, would be 3-13-1, and Chicago, if they were to lose, would still be 3-14. So, well, now you see, I think Chicago could potentially get the number 1 pick. But either way, regardless of what happens, I think there's a good chance that quarterbacks go 1 and 2, regardless of the math and my poor math on the air. I think quarterbacks are likely to go 1 and 2 if Chicago finds a partner. And I think they're going to try hard to do that. I don't think Chicago wants to trade down very far, but I think they're eyeing Indianapolis. as an obvious choice, and Carolina is already rumored to be aggressive to try to get up there for their guy. So we'll see. But I do think there's a good chance that the first 2 picks are quarterbacks, or at least 2 of the top 5 picks are quarterbacks. So that might leave Will Levis on the board for Atlanta. I suspect no matter what Atlanta's intentions are, they will try to make it seem like they're interested in Will Levis or somebody at 7, either to create interest in their pick or to try to pressure the Panthers to move up and give up assets. That's just good gamesmanship. I don't believe the Falcons will be interested in Will Levis, to be completely honest with you. And the reason for that is that the Falcons had an opportunity, and this is why I don't think the Falcons will be interested in a quarterback at 7 or 8 or 9 or wherever it is that they end up. They had an opportunity to add a quarterback with a premium pick that I thought was a great prospect, that a lot of people thought was a great prospect, in Justin Fields. They chose not to. So, whatever you think about that, they chose to pass on quarterback at the top. Then they get their quarterback, but not until the 3rd round. They're very patient. They get the guy they like. And this is a good opportunity for me to remind people that while Desmond Ridder was a 3rd round pick, and everyone's like, well, he's just a 3rd round pick, who cares? That's not likely to turn into a starter. He was the 2nd quarterback drafted. So it's not like he is a 3rd round pick and there were 7 quarterbacks taken ahead of him. He was a 3rd round pick and he was the 2nd quarterback taken in the draft. So different scenario than a draft where you have like 6 quarterbacks go in the first 2 rounds and then Ridder's just the scraps. It's teams just waited universally on quarterback. So I think Ridder is probably better than his draft slot indicates. I thought that at the time. I was thinking that he was going to be an early 2nd round pick, and a lot of draft analysts graded him that way. So I wouldn't get too caught up in him being a 3rd round pick or anything like that. But again, Falcons didn't prioritize quarterback last year. They did try to trade for Deshaun Watson, but again, I don't think that was the front office. Or I feel like they were being pressured potentially from other sources. I think they were just hoping for the slam dunk, but I think that it was a difficult situation, and I feel like that wasn't necessarily their plan going in, right? So I don't think that's really what they wanted to do. So ultimately, I don't think quarterback's the move at the top. And if quarterback's not the move at the top, then what are your other options? You have potential veterans in free agency, and it's not great. I mean, there are some guys certainly that are somewhat intriguing. So to list them off, Jacoby Brissett is probably the one that I would be most interested in, because I think he fits the system really well. But he's probably going to be asking for starter money now, because I think he proved himself for sure in Cleveland this year. Mike White really hurt his stock with this last performance, but he's somewhat interesting. Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, all these guys. None of them really moved the needle for me. I know Dave Choate likes Daniel Jones, so maybe that's another name to float out there. But none of these guys are real slam dunk difference makers. So if none of those guys come through, that doesn't seem like a great route. Maybe they're more likely, they're probably going to add a veteran backup / fringe starter type of guy if they do roll with Ridder, but they're not going to go for one of these big time starters. So if that's not the route, the only other option would be a trade for a veteran. Obviously, the main name that everyone has circled is Lamar Jackson, and I have something to do with that, right? We saw a mock trade in the Draft Network's latest mock, 3 first-round picks, plus this year's 2nd, plus this year's 4th. And if that sounds like a ridiculous amount, that's what the Browns just gave up for Deshaun Watson. And Lamar Jackson's way better. So, and doesn't have the baggage either. So, that's probably realistic compensation, if I'm being honest. So, that's what it's going to cost to get Lamar Jackson. And maybe the team's willing to do that. Maybe they aren't. I personally don't think that they're going to end up with Lamar Jackson. They might try, and I think pretty much any team that needs a quarterback will try, because why wouldn't you? But only one team's going to end up with him. It's probably going to be Baltimore. But, it's worth a shot, but I don't think it's likely that Lamar Jackson ends up in Atlanta next year. So that leaves you with none of those other options looking all that appealing. There's not really a great scenario there without the Falcons trading up in the draft with the Bears to get either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. And I don't think they're going to do that either for all the reasons that I mentioned. So then that leaves you with Desmond Ridder, but I think you're fine with that. And I think Ritter's shown enough that you can sell it, right? Like, oh, he showed us what we wanted to see. We were just working him in slowly. It was all about, getting him used to the NFL, getting him used to the offense. Now we think he can hit the ground running. We're going to bring in sort of a fringe starter veteran. Marcus Mariota would have been perfect to bring back, but it sounds like that is over with. So somebody else potentially comes in. Ridder is the starter, and he'll get 2023. I don't think he'll get more than 2023. So he'll really have to prove himself next year. But the reason you go with Ridder is because, one, he's already on the roster. He only cost you a third-round pick and a minimum salary. And he's shown already, like, he's in the building. So you get him all offseason. You get him working. You get him building the rapport. He's already got a great connection with Drake London. He's got a good connection with Michael Pruitt, who I think you should definitely bring back. All of these things are working in his favor, and he should have the benefit of a lot of free agency dollars and a whole draft spent to really focus on, of course, improving the defense and not putting so much pressure on the offense to do everything, but also bringing in the right offense that's going to get this thing over the top into a legitimate top 10 offense, not like, we're top 10 for a few weeks, but everyone really knows this isn't actually a top 10 offense sort of thing. And with all this free agency money and this full complement of draft picks, I think it's very possible that you come out of this offseason feeling really good about the rest of the roster built around this cheap rookie quarterback. Well, he wouldn't be a rookie next year, obviously, but a second-year quarterback with some NFL experience that's shown you enough that you're relatively confident. Now, reasons why they might not go with Ridder, if he face plants against the Bucs backups next week, that's obviously not going to do him any favors, but based on what we've seen so far, I think that's pretty unlikely. And then, this is basically a make or break season for Arthur Smith. I think that the expectations will be that they make the playoffs. And so they need to nail the free agency class. They need to nail the draft, and they need to get the right quarterback in here to give them an opportunity to make the playoffs. So if they don't think Ridder can get them there, then I think it's much, then they're going to bring in somebody else ultimately. So we don't know what they really think about Desmond Ridder, but to me, I think he's shown enough. I think he's certainly not holding the offense back. Like, I think if you look around, you see the pass protection breaking down, Ridder under pressure, guys not getting open, just general issues. Not really Ridder being like a catalyst for these issues. You see the defense sort of just really providing very little resistance. Part of the thing is that the Falcons have the fewest possessions of any offense in the NFL this year. A lot of that has to do with the defense just allowing these long drives over and over again, even though they don't always allow the big scores at the end, and props to them for that. They allow these long drives, and it limits the opportunities for the offense. So all that to say, I think Ridder's shown us enough to get a shot next year. I don't think he will be given just no competition whatsoever. I do think that we're going to see some veteran brought in, and it's probably not going to be the most interesting guy, right? But you look around, I think, a good like reliable veteran with a lot of experience would make a ton of sense here. You look at like a Case Keenum with the Bills if he doesn't re-sign in Buffalo. Perfect guy there. Jacoby Brissett I love, but I think he wants to be a starter somewhere. He deserves it. Like a Teddy Bridgewater if he doesn't return to the Dolphins. These are all guys that I think make a lot of sense. Kyle Allen, who's currently with the Texans, I think he fits this offense pretty well. He could be someone that's interesting. So you see who shakes loose. You see if there's a good, reliable veteran out there that you trust, and then you go with that. And then you roll with Ridder. and you hope that he continues on this path, because the upward trajectory that we've seen is really important. It's been consistent every single week, and that's a big thing. So if Ridder can just finish this out strong against what's probably going to be the Bucs backup, so like he's probably getting a layup opportunity here to just sort of really show off some of what he can do against probably inferior competition, to really give the coaching staff a nice, thing he's going to sign off, maybe finish his season 2-2, which is perfectly respectable. And they'll be like, oh, well, look, he lit up the Bucs for 303 TDs, and the Falcons just stomped on the Bucs backups. And look, it's the Bucs backups, but you still, if you're trying to sell something to your fans, that's a good thing to start with, right? A nice performance. So he still needs to play well against the Bucs. If the Bucs starters play, I think it's much more meaningful, whatever happens in that game. But I suspect that the Bucs will rest their starters. They don't really have any reason to play them. So we'll see, and ultimately what the front office and coaching staff decides to do with Ridder will completely change the landscape of this offseason, because if they can afford to commit all these resources to the rest of the roster and say that we're good enough at quarterback and we don't have to go spend all of our draft capital or all of our free agent dollars to go bring this guy in, you have a great opportunity to flesh out the rest of your roster with some premium talent that they're desperately lacking. Whereas if you go and trade for Lamar Jackson, as much as I love Lamar and do think he's pretty much the perfect quarterback for this system, you're probably trading away 3 first-round picks and 40 to 45 million in cap space for his new deal, which is probably going to be fully guaranteed. And your offseason looks far different. You're not working with first-round picks. You're basically saying Lamar Jackson is enough to get us over this hump. They're still going to have another 40 million, maybe even 50 million to go, because it's unlikely they're going to eat all of that $45 million per year cap hit in the first year. They're probably going to spread it out. But they're going to have a lot less to work with, probably half as much, and no first, and maybe no second, and maybe no fourth. So you're gutting your draft class and your 2 future draft classes. It just, because the Falcons were in on Deshaun Watson, it gives me pause thinking that they might try to make a move like that. But I think I'm coming more and more around on, I don't think that's the best decision. As good as Lamar Jackson is, and as big of an advantage he would be in terms of giving you an opportunity to really compete with an elite quarterback, the rest of this roster is so far, especially on defense, from being anything close to contending. I just think that you're not in a place where even adding Lamar Jackson is enough to get you to competitiveness. You're worse. You're far worse than the Ravens, and the Ravens are a fringe playoff team at this point. So, it's not a good situation. And Lamar Jackson, as fun as that would be, and as much as I love his fit in this offense, I think I'm probably leaning more towards Desmond Ridder. But it's just, now we're going to watch the Falcons trade for Lamar Jackson, and I'll be the loudest supporter of the move. So I don't really fault the team for wanting to go that route, because there's so few great quarterbacks, and if you can get one, you basically do whatever you can to do that. But ultimately, I don't think he's going to end up here one way or another. So in that case, your options are veterans, maybe like a Ryan Tannehill or whatever. If he gets cut, I think that's probably the most likely guy to end up here if they do want to sign that sort of starter level guy. But other than that, it maybe sign one of these veteran backups that's a reliable guy, and roll with Ridder. And look, if you bottom out, you're back in the quarterback search next year. And we reboot it, and that could be Arthur Smith risking his job. So we'll see how that goes. But at this point, I'm confident enough in Ridder's development and in his ability. And look, I love the guy coming out of college. I think this is a guy who was criminally underrated because he came out of a group of 5 school. Even though he went to Cincinnati and he was the first to ever make the playoff from the group of 5, and did a good job in the playoff. I thought he made some great throws there that were not caught, and did basically everything he could to keep that team alive. Elite athlete. I think people kind of are sleeping on what he offers as a quarterback prospect just because of his 3rd round slot. and sort of ignoring that, look, he was the second quarterback taken. Look at his RAS. Look at his arm. Look at that Damiere Byrd throw. Look at those tight window throws he hit in this game. Look at his athleticism. Like, what exactly does a Will Levis offer you that he doesn't? I mean, Will Levis is a little bit bigger, but are we saying he's better than like a 97th percentile athlete? I mean, I'm not willing to believe that. Does Will Levis have a better arm? Probably, but like, does it matter? How much better is it? And is Will Levis as consistent a passer? Absolutely not. Nowhere close. So, other than trading the farm to go get either one of these top two quarterbacks in the draft, who have their own question marks and have no NFL experience, by the way, or going for Lamar Jackson, who is great but has been hurt and is going to demand probably 3 first-round picks and $45 to $50 million a year, you can start to see why the Falcons might decide to just go with the rookie. And obviously he'll be a second-year player next year, but to go with Ridder, give him another opportunity, and see, what he can do, and see if you can really turn this third-round pick into your franchise guy. And the other side of the coin, and this will be the last point, is I think this offense is built to not require that great quarterback. I think this offense is built to only need good quarterbacking to be a really good offense. And it's built like that because the run game is such an important part of it, and they have that absolutely in place. And the passing game is going to be built off that run. It's going to be a lot of play action. They've got the weapons to really make it easy on the quarterback when these guys are healthy, like Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I do think they need a wide receiver too, like a good guy on day 2. But other than that, the framework for this being an offense, it doesn't require a tremendous top end quarterback to be a good offense. This is what this is. So I think if you've built this out, you need to see if it works, right? You need to give it a chance to work with Ridder. I think so far he's shown enough. We'll see how it goes next week. Maybe that changes things if he just completely bottoms out, but I don't think he will. I think he'll have a good game, and I think we'll go into 2023 still with questions, but with some level of confidence that Ridder has shown enough to take over this role going forward. And that would be great for him, giving him an opportunity to be the starter for a full offseason, to really get entrenched in the offense. Ridder's the type of guy, you heard about it all offseason and during the season, like he would stay after practice and work with guys. I think he's going to be the guy to meet up with players in the offseason and practice and work on timing and all these things. So I think Ridder's got all the intangibles too, and that's a big part of quarterbacking. He's done everything right off the field. So I like Ridder. I like his potential. I think that being in the third round probably put a chip on his shoulder too. And I think it's setting up nicely for this to be a potential, real bargain pick for the Falcons here if Ridder can turn into that sort of good starting quarterback. I'm not sure that he has the ceiling to ever be that great quarterback like a Lamar or a Mahomes, Josh Allen. Probably not going to be that guy, but if he could be like a fringe top 10 guy, that's all the Falcons need for this offense to be absolutely contending every year. Arthur Smith had like one of the number 1 offenses in the NFL with Ryan Tannehill. So they don't need a great quarterback to make this work. And that would be, and if they can build this roster around Ridder, especially while he's still cheap for the next 3 years, they have a real golden opportunity to be the next team that's got that quarterback on a rookie contract that really uses their free agent and draft assets well to build a great roster around them and really take advantage of that and try to win in this window of the next 3 years. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm excited about the future with Ridder. I think that's where we'll end up when the smoke clears, but anything can happen and we'll see. It'll be an interesting offseason for sure. But again, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Falcoholic podcast today. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Please do follow the show at Falcoholic Live on Twitter. If you're interested in supporting us, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, where you get ad-free early access to all these podcast episodes. You can also like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening to the podcast audio and you enjoyed the show. And if you're so inclined to donate to our Senior Bowl travel fund, you can go to streamlabs.com/thefalcoholic/tip, leave a question, and we'll read it on our next stream. Or you can do it on Venmo if you prefer that. You can go to my Twitter at FalcoholicKevin, and it's linked there. We appreciate everyone who's donated so far. We are 20% of the way there already. We still got another month to go until the Senior Bowl. So thank you guys so much for all of your contributions so far. Really appreciate that, personally. But yes, like I said, no Wednesday show, no post game because I will be traveling, but we will have a final game preview for you coming on Friday to preview this Bucs game. So until then, guys, we'll be back, of course, later next week with some more content as well. But we'll be out through, I guess technically, probably the next show would be like next Thursday or next Friday. So enjoy the final week of the NFL 2022 season, guys. Falcons are undefeated in 2023. Let's see if they can keep that streak going against the Bucs and just, really get it's always nice to hand the Bucs an L no matter what. But especially if Tom Brady's playing, they need to win that game. If Tom Brady's playing, they need to beat him. So that's how Desmond Ridder becomes a legend if he gets the dub against Tom Brady. So, guys, again, thank you so much for listening, for watching. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Podcast. Have a great day, folks.